Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. My name is Erika Mendez, and with me is my colleague Roberto Valdez. We're going to be presenting on family well-being in the current immigration context. Some brief housekeeping before we start the webinar. There's going to be a brief Q&A at the end of the presentation. Please direct any questions or doubts you may have to the chat box that's going to appear on the screen. We'll try to get to it at the end of the presentation. There will also be a follow-up email with some of the resources, the materials that we talk about today, and any lingering questions that you guys may have. You guys can direct them to that email. Myself and my colleague Rocio will try our best to answer those questions. As I mentioned, there will also be a survey link that's included in this email. This survey is going to help us a lot. The information will inform future presentations that we provide and will help us continue this work moving forward. So with that, we will begin the webinar.
And it was really fun.
Folks, mute their audio, please.
Yeah. So how long do you have to stay? I'm leaving. I have put in overtime this week, so I'm sure I have to. Our clock goes from, so today's the last day of my pay period. So tomorrow's the first
Give us
day.
1 second.
Goes from Thursday to Wednesday. So it's weird. Yeah. So.
Can people just make sure that they're muted? I know as folks are logging in, audio is turned on automatically. So thanks so much for your cooperation.
I mentioned, we're doing a presentation on family well-being in the current immigration context, a little bit about who we are. Policy Forum is a statewide advocacy organization that provides advocacy on a number of issues, bilingual education, early education. We try to increase access to affordable housing. We advocate for just immigration reform, and we even have Cultural Leadership Academy in-house that we love. So to learn more about us, please follow us on Facebook and our Twitter. We'd love to engage with all of you in a number of different capacities. This presentation is going to be divided into 4 sections. The first, we're going to provide a general overview of the impacted communities that are affected by changes in immigration. Have my colleague here provide an overview of the public charge and admissibility bar. There have been a number of drafts of this rule. We're going to be reviewing the latest draft that is likely to be implemented on October 15th. To be a third section that is going to talk about the implications this climate has on children and families. And then we're going to review resources available to support families and communities. And we'll end off with the Q&A for any questions that you all might have. Again, please direct them to the comment or chat box that we have for the webinar. With that, I will begin section 1. Again, my name is Erika Mendez. I am the Senior Policy Analyst for Education at the Latino Policy Forum. I'm going to start off with giving an overview of the communities who are affected by these changes in immigration. Most present in mind are children. There are 23 million young children between the ages of birth to 5 in the United States. A quarter of these children are children of immigrants, and that's defined by having at least one parent who is foreign born in the home. 96% of these young children are U.S. citizens. This data tells us that many of the families in the U.S. are considered mixed. This means that children often have citizenship and rights to state and federal benefits, while their foreign-born parents have limited access to these benefits and rights. This also means that mixed status families face heightened risk for family separation, given the heightened surveillance and orders to detain and deport those in the United States authorization. So we really want to keep in mind that the vulnerabilities of families at large, but also vulnerabilities of themselves who are trying to make sense of these changes in their environment. In the state of Illinois, about 14% of our state population is made up of the immigrant community, a total of about 1.8 million. There is a large immigrant community in the state that we have to make sure we can protect and support. And a lot of these changes that are happening at the federal level will disproportionately affect communities across the state, specifically these 5 counties: Cook, Kane, Lake, DuPage, and Will. The information in the following slides is important to share with communities who face these challenges in the future. So please bear that in mind. And with that, I'm going to transition and allow my colleague Roberto to talk about the changes to public charge and admissibility.
Thank you, Erica. Before I get started, just want to make note that I am not a lawyer. This is information that we have acquired through our one of our consultants, Rocio Velasquez-Cato, who is an immigration lawyer. So if there are any questions that unfortunately I cannot ask, we can definitely direct her, who has been great, and she can practically answer any question regarding the public charge and admissibility rule. We'll start off with this kind of imagery of Trump's invisible wall. The public charge is just another layer to this wall that the administration has been building. There have been many changes and proposed changes to quote unquote legal immigration process. And it is clear that the goal is that for all immigrants, regardless of status, to be deterred from access basic needs programs and even deter some from exercising their rights. So as you can see, this display here kind of breaks down the different ways that the administration has kind of created this so-called wall. So what is the public charge? So the definition of a public charge is a person who is considered likely to become primarily dependent on the government for subsistence. This test does not apply to everyone, and it is a long list of immigrants that it doesn't apply to. The assessment is made only when a person applies to enter the U.S. or applies to adjust status to become a lawful permanent resident. It's not when applying to become a U.S. citizen. I know that information has been unfortunately inaccurately reported in the media. There has been some outlets who have talked about applying to become a U.S. citizen, the public charge under that umbrella, but I just want to make it clear that it does not. The assessment only made through consular process, the visa and green card, or when adjusting status to LPR. Just important things to highlight there. Under the current policy, only 2 types of public benefits may be considered for a public charge. The first one is, as you can see, cash assistance for income maintenance. And the second one is the institutionalization for long-term care or government expense. So the first one is, for example, cash assistance, the SSI, the general assistance, so cash assistance for income maintenance. Those are the only 2 that currently the public charge covers. Of circumstances of determination. Going forward, an officer will look at things such as age, health, family status, financial status, education and skills, and affidavit of support. legally enforceable contract that one signs to accept financial responsibility for another person, usually a relative who is coming to the U.S. to live permanently. This is the person likely to rely on cash or long-term care there. So the current public charge rule that the administration has filed, and we're looking at it being implemented on October 15th. I'll go over that briefly. This is the new definition. It is dramatically different than the current public charge definition, with a couple of things: the totality of circumstances changing, number one, and number two, the additional benefits that the administration has included in the determination. So again, the previous definition is an immigrant likely to become primarily dependent on the government for substances. And the new one, excuse me, is a person who, quote, receives one or more public benefit for more than 12 months in the aggregate within any 36-month, such that, for instance, receipt of two benefits in 1 month counts as two. So the new broader standard is receiving these benefits for 12 months within the 36-month period. That equals a public charge under the new definition. If you're receiving more than one benefit, each will factor into that time individually, and you may be, and it may be to 12 months faster. Just a reminder, can folks mute their audios? We're getting some feedback here. Appreciate your help here. Great. So moving on here, the public benefit defined as the different, the new benefits that are being added there. You do have the cash assistance, the long-term institutionalization, but now you see additional benefits like non-emergency Medicaid, SNAP or EBT or food stamps, as folks know them as, housing assistance, so public housing or Section 8 housing vouchers and rental assistance, as well as federal, state, local, and tribal cash assistance. Special consideration for those caring for children and disabled individuals in the family. This positively weighed in education and skills, plus income break. Any benefit not specifically listed in the proposed rule will not be considered. So if it's not under this box to your these boxes here, then that will not fall under the public the public charge determination. The proposed income considerations, new income threshold for households that hope to overcome a public charge test, requires that the immigrant, not just the sponsor, earn at least 125% of the FPL, and it weighs as heavily, quote unquote, heavily positive if a household income of 250% of FPL. To avoid any scrutiny under the public charge test, family of four would need to earn nearly $63,000 annually. And just to kind of give you an idea how this rule has been moving forward, there was a leaked executive order, leaked draft, January of 2017. January 2018, there were changes through the Foreign Affairs Manual, also known as FAM. From October to December 2018, DHS published a proposed rule for a 60-day comment period. Within that time frame, there were comments submitted to the Office of Management and Budget. Then July of this year, the final rule went back to OMB for final review. August 14th, a final rule was posted to the Federal Register, which is what I just went through right now. And there's a 60-day waiting period before the rule is in effect. We are looking at the final rule being published on October 15th, which is only a couple weeks, less than 2 weeks away. There's currently litigation that is pending that might halt the implementation. More information on that can be sent around to the group, but we are going forward as an organization and the coalitions that we're a part of, as if this rule will be implemented October 15th.
So next we're going to be discussing the implications this will change and many of the other rule changes that have been happening and the other executive orders that the current administration has taken the liberty of moving forward with and its implications on children and families. Um, Particularly, we've seen that this kind of coercion against immigrants is negatively affecting the mental health of the community. It's a lot of fear and uncertainty around their status in the country, around what's going to happen to their children and their livelihoods in the United States, and is causing a sort of isolation in the community. When the president currently the current president took office back in 2017, we saw that there was a drop in attendance. We saw a withdrawal from community, and the rule change of public charge has been released. We've seen some negative implications there, specifically something that we refer to as the chilling effect. This means that many community members, not only in the state of Illinois, but across the country, have been avoiding certain programs and benefit usage before the rule has even been implemented. And this includes programs that are included in the public charge inadmissibility bar, but often because of this word miscommunication in the media, it also includes other programs that aren't included in the public charge, things like Head Start. So what this means is that the community doesn't quite understand this rule and are withdrawing themselves from accessing critical social services meant to guard their well-being. National research from the Urban Institute finds that as many as 26 million people, families with immigrant children, may be chilled. This turns out to be 1 in 5 low-income immigrant families afraid of accessing public. To kind of measure the impact this has been having in Illinois, the Latino Policy Forum has been surveying a number of partners and community members on this issue. The survey has found that 27% of respondents have discontinued use for themselves or their children because of changes to public. What are the implications of this chilling effect, the climate, and more pressingly, the rule change that has happened around public charge? In short, families are making decisions based on inaccurate and misguided information, as I've previously mentioned. There has been community withdrawal and social isolation, but we've also seen families discontinue use of critical nutrition, health, and social programs that are critical to the healthy development of their children. Lastly, we see that this is a financial burden on local and state agencies because they're trying to find ways to locally fund social safety net programs. Some of these short-term implications may not seem as grave or alarming if temporary, but sustained fear and isolation, as we've seen over the past years, have longer implications on families. Families have been experiencing this sustained stress for some time now, and research shows that it's going to manifest in the following ways. Children who are still developing critically in the first 5 years of life, but even beyond that, when experiencing heightened stress, experience a disruption in physical and social development. We also see that this sustained stress, it decreases kindergarten readiness if they're discontinuing programs like Head Start, or if their attendance is being affected. We also know that this prolonged period of stress has long-term health implications for families. Research has shown that children who experience persistent stress, especially in the critical ages of 0 to 5, have the risk of experiencing cardiovascular diseases, are prone to diabetes, and have long-term mental health issues such as depression, dementia, social anxiety, and low self-esteem. these short-term and long-term implications aren't just specific to public charge. If you find that you do want more information specific to public charge, I would advise reaching out to PIF Illinois at povertylaw.org or protectingimmigrantfamilies.org. And there are additional resources besides the PIF Coalition that exist in the community and that are accessible to community members affected by this rule change. Specifically, for parents who are grappling with the fear of separation or deportation in Illinois, Loyola Law Clinic, based out of Chicago, developed a comprehensive guide for parents on how to develop or what considerations they should have in developing a preparation plan for their family. However, this is just the first. We also encourage families to talk about this preparedness planning with their young children or with children under the age of 18 to help make sense of what is going on in the climate around them. Some suggestions, given that this is no easy task for anyone, is to begin the conversation from a place of a teaching moment rather than fear. Children are exposed to media, to things at school that might scare them and their perception of what is going on. We also encourage families to have age-appropriate conversations with children, given that some children live in mixed households where there are young ones and possibly some adolescents. It's very important to differentiate the conversations. The conversation you would have with a 15-year-old who might understand this climate a little better is really different from how you would engage someone who is 7 or 8 years old. So make sure you're differentiating. We also recommend that there is a plan for this conversation. You don't want to bridge this topic at a Chuck E. Cheese where there are a lot of loud noises and a lot of children playing. You want a quiet space where children can process, take some of this information in. And lastly, we want the community to be able to follow up with children on some of these themes, given they might see something in the media that triggers something for them, and they might need a space to talk through it or might have questions. Creating that room and opportunity for conversation. And lastly, create normalcy. Some individuals lack next of kin or a guardian who can provide some stability for children whose parents are detained or deported. It's important that the person that's designated in their preparedness plan is someone that the child knows and regularly engages with. So it's not someone that you see once a year for Christmas or you see once a year at a family party. It's a relationship with this person so that the child feels comfortable with their selected guardian. Now, there are other resources available to begin this conversation. Sesame Street has created a lot of interacting and engaging resources in multiple languages that begins to stimulate what this means for a child in a way that they're able to receive it and process it. So there are two, one family guide that is broader in emergency planning in general, if there is threat to the community, who do you call, what the plan is for the family, and then there are some specific ones related to immigration, where the child has some understanding of what the 911 is, who to contact if there's an emergency, who's going to pick them up from school if parents don't show up. This guide is going to really help walk some families and individuals who are families think through these things with children. The Latino Policy Forum developed a Safe and Healthy Living Resource Kit 2 years ago. It's a comprehensive document that lists things like food pantries, detention centers in Illinois, where to find free or reduced mental health services, accessible bilingual immigration resources for families who are looking to have some counsel. And so these are all things that families haven't considered, but maybe are considering given the changes to public. It's an attack on social safety net programs around living and SNAP. So it's food, it's all their basic needs. And so this guide is a way for them to access some of those resources without the fear of having that information used to affect any future application for their legal permanent residence. We also recommend using the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights directory for immigration services. This is a little bit more comprehensive than what we offer in our guide. This is statewide. It is inclusive of other languages besides Spanish. Ours just focuses on Spanish, given with the Latino Policy Forum, but it's also very comprehensive and allows for individuals to decide what their best option for legal recourse is. We highly recommend utilizing the Latino Policy Forum's website for resources. We try to upload all of our current resources, documents, guides, information onto our website. The handouts or the resources that we've walked through are going to come to all of you in an email after this in PDF form, bilingual to the extent that we could find those documents. And then we also recommend our partners at the Onset Prevention are also doing some extensive work around this. And so they're provide resources that are also very useful to the community. As I mentioned, there will be a brief survey at the end of this. We wanted to leave ample time for questions to the extent we can answer them. But before we do, we wanted to thank our funders, the Chicago Community Trust, Irving Harris Foundation, Pritzker Foundation, Healthy Communities Foundation, and the Illinois Immigrant Funders Collaborative for all their generous support in allowing us to continue this work. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and begin the Q&A section. Please direct those questions to the chat box. And remember that this webinar, for those who chimed in late or weren't able to access the audio, is being recorded and will be live on our website.
Anyone who wants to ask questions, just start typing those into the chat box.
Unfortunately, we won't be able to recap for those who were able to join late because we did have who did join us at 3 p.m. But this will be recorded and uploaded onto our website so that you can access whenever you want. If you do forget something, it'll be live to engage and utilize. We will also be sending it in a follow-up email after ending the webinar.
Your website, will that be located? We haven't determined exactly where it would either be under the education category or under the public charge. I would check. But as soon as it's posted and it's live, we'll make sure to send a the link, the live link to the group, so that you can go directly there.
We also have a question on how the forum would suggest getting this information if reluctant into school. Now, this has been something that we've been grappling with for some time. Parents, I guess, in my opinion, have been more receptive to things that they can digest on their own without having to ask for help through the school. So things like sending them maybe this digital presentation in Spanish or in English might be a way for them to engage in this topic and learn more about it without having to physically leave their home in case they're afraid of leaving their home and entering into spaces. But in the event that parents do feel comfortable walking into school, aren't asking for help from an administrator or a teacher, the forum provides these presentations in person in Spanish or in English. So if that's something that's of interest to your school or school district, I would recommend sending us an email and making that request. It's totally free. We just need the request in order to begin developing the content. And if that isn't enough for parents to feel comfortable, there is an opportunity for you to just provide them with the resources, let them take it home, ponder it for a while, and eventually, if they do have questions, they'll have resources available to possibly help them answer it. And it might even begin to bridge a conversation where they feel comfortable enough to ask staff at a school or an administrator for help. Additional questions? We also have some of these resources that I mentioned to send or just to give out to parents, maybe having a table at a parent-teacher conference night. So we'll be able to share that with you in a follow-up email in the event that your school district education setting allows it to be shared.
Question, what do you do for those families who are not able to read in Spanish or English? We could look into providing whatever the language that they need the information in.
Yeah,
we haven't had that request yet, but I'm assuming we could try to accommodate in the language that you're looking for.
There are also some resources developed by other advocacy groups in other language. I know the Illinois Coalition of Immigrant and Refugee Rights distributes in a number of different languages. Our partners at Refugee One also have these resources in another language. So there is an opportunity to share that information as long as there's a request and we are able to direct whoever it is to these organizations. There was also a comment that what if there's a Spanish speaker who doesn't have a advanced level of Spanish to understand some of the materials. If that's the case, I think it's important for that district school or whomever that is, the community center, to reach out to the forum and give us that information ahead of time so that we're able to curate the content at a level that's going to be understandable by all who's attending. So there is an opportunity for us to play around with some of these slides and make it more accommodating for community members who have those difficulties.
Another question, do you provide training for district staff to help guide families with correct answers, resources, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. We've done these presentations in partnership with larger organizations like the Illinois Resource Center. They've been a huge help in helping us get this information out to educators and directors of bilingual programs. But we're also able to come out to the district directly and provide these presentations one-on-one. We've done it in the past. It's just a matter of having the school district reach out to us and give us an idea of what information would be useful for their district staff to receive. We just had a question on how we can get these resource guides. As I mentioned, we're going to try to send all of the resources that we've mentioned throughout the presentation in a subsequent email. To the extent that we can, we'll try to provide them in both languages. But we will be sending them via email. They should also be linked to our website, but you'll definitely get them in a follow-up email.
I would also suggest registering or going on to protectingimmigrantfamilies.org. There's a lot of information there. There's also a newsletter sign up that folks can sign up to. They're sending out email updates daily, if not weekly. So would highly suggest that as well.
The question, are school districts legally allowed to ask about citizenship or resident status registering? I believe that isn't something that's regular practice for districts. There might be some limitations, especially with FERPA, and that's not something that I think is needed for school records. However, we will consult with our legal attorney on staff to make sure that we're able to accurately answer this. However, there is versus Doe that does say that all children are entitled to an education regardless of their citizenship status. So that question would eventually, that issue eventually doesn't really come into, it's not legally asked. I hope that answers, I hope that answers your question.
Questions out there.
If you do think of something that maybe you have a question about that didn't come up in this presentation, you can reach out to both myself and my colleague Rocio, who wasn't able to attend this webinar today, but we'll try to follow up with those specific questions in as fast as we can.
As a reminder, after this webinar, we will be sending out the presentation that was given today, the resources that Erica highlighted, some important links and email addresses that you all can take advantage of. And again, just to emphasize, if any other questions come up between ending this now and forward, feel free to reach out to Erica, Rocio, or me, Roberto Valdez, and we can accommodate some time there.
Everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. Make sure to check out our website for these additional resources and the webinar. We hope that this was as informative as we wanted it to be for all of you. And again, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.